Let me guess. At least one time in your life you folded a paper airplane. But why? Why does it work? Why do they fly? Have you ever wondered this question in grade school when you just finished folding one? They fly due to something called physics. Physics is the branch of science concerned with the nature and properties of matter and energy. The subject matter of physics, distinguished from that of chemistry and biology, includes mechanics, heat, light and other radiation, sound, electricity, magnetism, and the structure of atoms. Many factors play into the physics behind paper airplanes, but they all boil down into something called aerodynamics. Aerodynamics is the study of the properties of moving air in the interaction between the air and solid bodies moving through it. Imagine a flat piece of paper and letting it go to see it slowly drift down. But why? What is that force? If we take another look, we'll see it is because of Newton's second law. We see here that force equals mass times acceleration. When talking about the force of weight, the acceleration is gravity. On Earth, gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. Newton's law of universal gravitation states that force equals the gravitational constant times the mass of the first object, which would be Earth, and the second object is anything on Earth, divided by the radius between the two centers squared. When we solve for acceleration, we get that it equals the gravitational constant times the mass of the Earth, divided by the radius between the two centers squared. Because all of the units are constant for anything that remains near Earth, acceleration remains constant. When we input our values for our variables, we get that acceleration equals 9.8 meters per second squared. This acceleration is the same for all things on Earth. Well, there are other variables. So what else? Well, there's velocity. Velocity is the displacement divided by the time. Velocity is like speed, but velocity is a vector quantity, while speed is a scalar quantity. Scalar quantities only have magnitude, while vectors have both magnitude and direction. It takes to get from point A to point B. Another force that plays into paper airplanes is lift. Lift is the coefficient of lift times density multiplied by the velocity squared divided by 2 times the wing area. The force of lift is the force of weight's equal opposite. When the two forces are balanced, they can cancel each other out. When the plane is flying, the wings create the force of lift pushing the plane up. Meanwhile, the force of weight from the Earth is pulling the plane down. Another force that affects the plane is drag. Drag is the coefficient of drag times the density of the fluid multiplied by the velocity squared divided by 2 times the reference area. Much like how the force of lift cancels out the force of weight when balanced, the force of thrust can cancel the force of drag when it's balanced. Say your plane is on a two-dimensional plane. The lift and gravity would make up the y values, while the thrust and drag make up the x values. I'm going to rewrite gravity as weight to make it a little bit more clear. Lift pushes up, weight pushes down, thrust pushes forward, and drag pushes backward. The last force here is thrust. Thrust can get very complicated depending on what you're talking about, so I'm just going to introduce it using Newton's third law. Newton's third law states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, meaning that if one object exerts a force on a second object, the second object simultaneously exerts a force of the same magnitude and opposite direction back on the first. Simplified, the equation for thrust would be the mass flow rate times the quantity of the exit velocity of air minus the entrance velocity of air. There can be many equations based on the type, such as propellers, direct rocket fuel, etc., which is why I'm using the simplified version. In this case, the thrust for the paper airplane would be your arm throwing it. As long as the thrust is greater than the drag and the lift is greater than or equal to the weight, the plane will keep going. This has been the physics behind paper airplanes. Thank you.